Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. This is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, and we get to talk about everything in between. Wherever you're listening, wherever you're at, please, you know what to do. Click subscribe, like, retweet, whatever the heck you have to do. You know what you're supposed to do. So we always appreciate you out there. Incredible guest today. I have Michael Dhulst. He is the co-founder and CEO of Super League Triathlon. Should be an interesting conversation. Michael, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. In London, so it's been a long day already, but excited to be on the podcast.
London is such an incredible city. I was lucky enough to spend 7 days there in London. Kind of went around Windsor Castle. Absolutely loved it. So hopefully I get to go back. I don't know. The world's a weird place right now. So cross your fingers. Hopefully I can
Exactly.
get there
Yeah,
soon. But
exactly.
enough about me. This show's all about you, Michael. That's why you're on. And I have the first question, obviously, for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
It's, I've always loved sports. As a young child, all I remember is running, is cycling, is being active, and playing soccer. I mean, I think every child in Europe starts with soccer, right? So playing soccer and every sport. I mean, I was always interested in doing every sport possible when I was a child. So it's always been in my DNA to be active, driven, and sport is like the perfect catalyst, but also the perfect go-to place if you're active.
I love that. And I think it's important, right? Like, I personally hate running. I absolutely hate it. But if I'm running while doing something, it's so much more fun, right? Like,
Yeah,
I'd much rather, like, my wife, and I almost called her my girlfriend, my wife and I, we just recently were like, do you want to start playing tennis? Like, neither of us know what the hell we're doing. Like, pickleball, tennis, sure. It's just something to do to get
yeah.
out there and active. And I can't disagree. I can't agree with you more. I think it's very important. So, I am curious. We'll start with your story, kind of halfway through, let's call it, right? So you were actually in the purchasing department at Volkswagen before you decided to get into this athlete thing, this endurance athlete thing on top of it. I'm kind of curious. We don't have to go into every little minutia, every little piece of detail, but what was it? Was it a quarter life crisis, midlife crisis? What happened where you're like, man, I can't handle this anymore. I want to put my body through the ringer and see what I'm capable of.
No, I mean actually, the interest in triathlon came before the Volkswagen. I was inspired in 1996. I'm from Belgium, right? So in 1996, Luc van Lierde was the first non-American, I think, who won Ironman Hawaii, right? And he's from Belgium. So and Belgium has a deep roots in endurance sports, cycling. Cycling is massive in Belgium. We have a deep pool of talent, and it goes back for ages, right? So and in 1996, the first non-American who wins Ironman Hawaii is from Belgium. So the whole of Belgium thought, okay, here's the next endurance sports we're good at. And triathlons started everywhere in Belgium, and became very, very popular. So yeah, I was at I think I was at university then, and well, said well I was into sports, and I thought, okay, here's this triathlon thing, let's give it a go, right? And that was my first triathlon. Then afterwards, obviously going to university, find a job. It's like what you do in life, right? Go to university, find a job, and after a good many years, is Volkswagen. I started at Volkswagen in Germany. Volkswagen sent me to China. Had a project in China. That project came to an end. Volkswagen was like, okay, what's next? Go back to Germany. Go somewhere else. Well, okay, wait. I've now worked hard and great experience for a couple of years. It's time to take a break, right? And I was in China. It's not necessarily the place of healthy living. Definitely not at the time, right? They were going through their own industrial revolution, if you want, right? So I said I'll take a break, and I went to Taiwan, and I want to pick up sports, take a year off. It took us, I mean, Volkswagen. I had a good deal with them and taking a sabbatical. So it was the idea was take a sabbatical, do a bit of sports, study a bit more Chinese, and then consider what's next. So that's what it. And when doing that, I've always been very driven and always been very passionate. So instead of just doing a bit of triathlon, why don't I try to pursue a qualification for Kona myself? Right. So immediately set myself a goal and go for that. Right. So yeah.
That's pretty impressive, man. I mean, yeah, just the opportunity, right? As you said, it was the timing was there. I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in coincidences. But if you put yourself in the right place enough times,
Yeah,
good things are going to happen, right? And clearly, that was able to happen for you by having this opportunity to say, you know what, let me pump the brakes. I kind of want to do my own thing for a little bit, hang out, and then maybe we could get back to it. And eventually, this leads into you full time becoming a
yeah,
triathlete, correct? Like you're training for an Ironman, you eventually do go run it, you qualify, you run it. What is that shift in mindset like? Because clearly you just stated it. It seems like you're a very goal oriented person. How are you able to go from maybe I don't know? You tell me how casual your running was. Are you a 5 mile a day guy or a 5 mile a week guy like myself? Like how are you able to then say I like this a lot. I'm gonna set this goal not for as you were saying to get certification or I apologize I couldn't quite understand what you said before, but you're gonna say hey I want to run an Ironman now because that's
yeah.
a full time job in itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, indeed, it's like when I was working, right? I was fully committed to that. Yes, of course, I continued running during the weekend, maybe sometimes during the week, but it was work, 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 right? And then taking a break, yeah, as I said, go back to what I liked before, right? At the triathlon, right? Still, I was still running, I was still cycling a little bit, had to pick up swimming again, but then yeah, looked at it, playing it, doing it, right? And then I say, what am I doing? What is the biggest goal I can think of? I'm qualifying for Ironman Hawaii World Championships. That's where I'm going, right? So immediately, yeah, and then I structured my life around that, right? Got into the right groups, the people who I got into the people who've been there before. I mean, it's like that, right? You have to be in the right place at the right time, but you also have to be open to it. And I believe actually to a certain extent you create your group of friends, you create your entourage, right? And if you create an entourage that is going places, well, you're going with them, right? So yeah, it's fairly simple ultimately. And I think yeah, that brought me to this, that put me on this Ironman journey, and being on that Ironman journey, so okay, I need to do an Ironman, so I'll do an event somewhere. And then I thought, okay, I'm actually taking a sabbatical, so I should enjoy life. So the first Ironman I'm going to do is down in New Zealand, right? It's a beautiful place. Let's go down all the way to New Zealand, see something nice, something nature, right? I mean, after China, you want to see something nature, makes sense, and go down to New Zealand. And at the event there, I ran into Felix Walsurfer, who owns and was the CEO of Challenge Family, which is a competitor brand to Ironman, right? And I mean, I'm obviously always looking for opportunities, always talking to people. So I started talking to Felix and said, "Oh yeah, I know that you have a massive event, arguably the biggest triathlon in the world is in a lot, and it's Challenge Families, so it's Challenge Roth, right? I know that you have this massive event in Germany in Roth. You have an event out here in New Zealand, pretty abstract as a concept. What's happening here, right?" And then yeah, we started talking, and then yeah, he said, "Well, yeah, we have this event series. We want to build out a family of events, etc." And I said, "Oh well, I'm doing this Ironman thing anyway, right? So I'm doing the. Why don't I put one of your events on in Taiwan, right?" And yeah, started talking. I'm obviously always interested in business, so I'll buy a license of you, and I'll take the license for Greater China. Start organizing an event in Taiwan. This whole this triathlon thing is also going places in Taiwan. The timing seems right. Let's give it a go. And since I'm training anyway, since I'm full time doing triathlon, talking about triathlon all the time, can as well talk about a new event also that I'm setting up myself, right? So that started progressing, and you bring triathlon to Taiwan. So I was looking at, okay, how do I make that big, right? So who's the biggest name in triathlon? And then at the time it was Chris McCormack, Macca, right? He's what is the New York Times says world's fittest man. So he was outspoken, loud, uh, uh, won Kona a couple of times as a professional athlete, four-time world champion. So let's reach out to this guy, right? And coincident, at the time he was living in LA. I think he spent the last 15 years of his career in LA, but at the time he was looking at retirement. And yeah, he's originally from Australia, so he was looking to come through Asia back to Australia. So I said, well, come do this event, start promoting triathlon a little bit in this little outpost of Taiwan. There's a good vibe here. So he came over, and yeah, again, being open
Mm-hmm.
for business, we started talking, and we connected, right? And I think that's kind of the rhythm of life, right? You do what you're passionate about, but you put yourself in a position with the right people, with the right entourage to be open for new opportunities. Pretty
I
much, right? So,
I love that. You said you made a point a little earlier. You said you're if you work with the right entourage and they're going places, you're going with them, right? I another way that I've heard that essentially said is show me your five closest friends and I'll tell you what you're going to end up like. You're the
yeah,
average of the five closest people around you. So if you keep putting yourself around successful people, around goal oriented people, around people that want to do
yeah,
things, movers and shakers, right? You're
yeah,
going to eventually do that. And you're
yeah,
also going to run into more people like them. And it sounds like
yeah,
that happened with Felix. It sounds like that happened with McCormick, as you said. So I think just those opportunities. And you also, like, you've been saying yes this whole time. So many
yeah,
people would say no to many of these things, right? But you just continued to say yes, 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 yes. And I think that's also a very important part that people forget sometimes, right? It's like, it's so much easier to say no. It's so much easier to go back to your 9 to 5 at Volkswagen, right? Like, that would have been the easiest thing in the world. You're getting a paycheck, you know what you're doing. Yeah, is it hard work? But you kind of know what's going on. It's not that crazy. And instead, you decide, hey, I want to qualify for an Ironman. And along the way, oh, I actually want to put on my own Ironman in a country that really doesn't know that much about it, or it hasn't really infiltrated that society yet. So I guess there's multiple questions. I'll start with this one. What was it like training and also trying to build something like this out at the same time? Because both again seem like full-time jobs. And as you said
yeah.
before, when it was work, you're work, work, work. When it's training, you're train, train, train. I mean, we only have 24 hours in a day, man. I'm curious. Did you find an extra hour? Were you only sleeping 3-4 hours? Tell me like how you were able to put all of this together and do it well. Because anybody could do it terribly, right? How did
Yeah.
you do it well?
But I think the important thing in life is to do what you love to do, right? And then you just do it, because then it becomes part of your DNA, right? I mean, it's kind of, people ask me, oh, when are you taking a holiday? I'm like, I'm always on holiday, but I'm also always working because I love what I do, right? And that's what I do. It's not my work. It's what I do, right? It's a different concept. Um, yeah, and I think so. Again, one flows into another. Of course, I'm training full time at that point, and I start organizing these events. But you're talking to the same people, right? It's the people. I mean, if you grow an event, you're in the community. If you're in the community, well, wants to do the sport, so that community is actually your customer, right? So yeah, and by being out there and yeah, being very active in it and promoting it and going for it, you become an important part of that community, right? And if you then suddenly say, "Hey guys, I have this event over there. Let's all go and do it," it snowballs. Right? That's the kind of, it's the stickiness of the enthusiasm, right? I think that's what kind of made it an easy flow ultimately, and ultimately, yes, of course, the entrepreneurial spirit that is always there, right? But yeah, like you said, it comes with a lot of arguably hard choices. To me they came natural, but at the point that Volkswagen said, well, now it's time that the sabbatical is over, and I'm like, nah, not, yeah, that's good, but well, I'm not coming back. My father got in the plane, flew to Taiwan, and is like, are you all right? Are you on drugs or something? What's wrong, right? You're making a massive mistake here. You spent the good part of 10 years working on a career. I mean, you should go back there, right? This is a good company. This will give financial security. This is what you need to do. Triathlon, sports. I mean, how does that even work? I mean, how is that even a job, doing sports, right? So uh,
Funny how that works out, right? And obviously that's the mindset of different generations, and it makes sense, right? Your dad came from a different time. He came from a place where that, I mean, my great grandparents instilled it in my grandparents, who instilled it in my dad, and instilled it in me. Is you have to make sure that you are financially successful because
yeah,
you will be happier. And then
yeah,
I got a job where I was making a lot of money and I hated everything. I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. I absolutely hate what I'm doing. I'm not going to do this anymore. Now
yeah,
I'm doing something I love, still making pretty solid money, and I'm significantly happier now. So isn't it funny
yeah,
how that works out, right? The money
yeah,
will come. The money
yeah.
always comes. It's always there as long as you're working hard and doing the right thing, right?
Yeah, but you're confident, and you have to do. I think you have to do you, right? That's the important thing. And then if you do you, and you make an effort of doing you good, right? Things will fall into place. Yeah, I 100% believe that.
I love it. And so I guess I'm kind of curious, like how do you create a triathlon event, right? Like, swimming, biking, running. Okay. Is it just, hey, let me put up some cones and, oh, here's some water? Like, I'm sure there's a lot that goes into it, right? There's sponsors. You guys need to make money. You don't just do this for
Yeah,
free. As you said, you already started, I mean, we can kind of look back with rose-colored glasses, right? And say you're kind of in that sports influencer space, right? By bringing that other gentleman over and saying, hey, man, like, let's get you involved. He's big, bold, and brash. So I guess, like, how do you even go about creating an event, doing something when it seems like your world was not events or event creation prior to this?
well, I mean, yeah. Again, it's I mean, my role in this was more the creative kind of organizing, right? Okay, and being the brand, being I was in the community, so I was the one who was able to, yeah, spark the enthusiasm with other athletes to come and sign up, spark the enthusiasm with sponsors, and ultimately, yes, I mean, I do triathlon, right? So I had a good understanding what a cool course could look like, and then, yeah, just bring somebody on who has organized events before and say, look, I want to run here, bike there, swim here. Let's connect this. I mean, it's not rocket science how that works out, right? And then, okay, now we need to build a little bit of an operation around that. How do we do that, right? And, yeah, there's plenty of people in the event industry who you can partner up with or hire, right? And get going, right? So, and then at that time it was very grassroots, right? This was the first time I was doing it. I didn't really see it as a job. I saw it more as an opportunity. So why not give this thing a go, right? So I wasn't really overthinking it with big marketing strategies or growth strategies. It was just, let's organize this event, right? And I'm in the community. I bring Maka over. He's famous, right? And I know a guy who's organized events before. So, and I'll give him a bit of guidance and see, I mean, how I want the course to look like, and it all kind of fell into place, right? But in hindsight, it's also a good learning curve if you start with basically an MVP, right? Um, and yeah, and it's you start understanding the basic dynamics of how the event industry works, right? And also how you attract people, right? That's probably very important.
And that's actually going to be my next question, right? You're in a country, Taiwan, not very big. It's populated. I'll be honest, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but people live there. How do you kind of get the people, right? Because, yeah, as you said, you're going to have people from all over the world that want to come run this event.
Yeah,
That's going to be great. But I feel
yeah,
like that is a small subsect of the people that you actually need to be there, right? You need
yeah.
local people. As you said, you went grassroots, you did all these things. How did you drum up ideas and experiences and values for all these people that might not really know the sport of triathlon that well? I'm sure they know running, biking, and swimming, right? But have never done it together, have never done it for this long, or this have gone this far. How do you drum up that enthusiasm in a community that doesn't really know too much about it?
Well, it's. I mean, at that time I'd been in Asia for almost 10 years, right? So I understood. I mean, I spoke the language. I
Mm-hmm.
understood how the psyche works, right? So ultimately, it was very much about building a network, right? So I got some younger students involved, right, from university who are into sports, and got them as coaches and started saying, okay, we do these group sessions, right, and everybody could come, and these younger coaches, for them it was kind of an apprenticeship. It was great. They were involved in something extracurricular, right, but something also they were passionate about. And then some older professional people, they came and they had a Wednesday night run, Monday night cycle, Saturday Monday night swimming, Saturday cycling, right? And we built a big community, and then we tapped into running clubs, cycling clubs, etc., etc. And, yeah, it was just building those networks of having people there, and they connect you with a club, and then ultimately for the event we just invited all the clubs, and we said all the clubs have to have tents around the event, right? And all the clubs came. Of course, they wanted to have the biggest tent. I said, well, you can only have the biggest tent if you bring the most people, right? And it became a bit of a competition. Oh, yeah, I want to sign up with 100 people. No, we sign up with 150 people. I'm like, okay, yes, we can do that. So, yeah, it was very much fun, and yeah, just kind of being in the community, right? But yeah, I won't lie. I mean, it was great while I was training, but also very quickly I was like, okay, this is fun, but it's not scalable, right? And I think that's typically, I think good mass participation events are grown out of the community, right? But the scalability of it is obviously relatively tricky, right? And you see big businesses like Ironman, like ASO in Europe. There's a couple of others, right? They ultimately start then, yeah, acquiring multiple local events. They still have these local influencers or local leaders in place, but yeah, you build over an overarching infrastructure, right? And I think, yeah, that's at that point I was like, okay, doing that across Asia, that was not me, right? So and that's how we then kind of migrated through the sport of triathlon again, ran into the Prince of Bahrain, who was doing a triathlon in the Philippines, coincidentally, right? And I was
No such
together.
thing as coincidence. Wasn't
Uh,
coincidence. You're in the right place at the right time.
you put yourself there. We were there with Maka, and Maka is obviously the first time world champion. So the prince wanted to meet him, and we started talking. I said, look, okay, what can we do? I mean, yeah, and I thought it was a great vision that we kind of created, right? Because here you have a prince of a Muslim country, Bahrain. Let's say it's, I won't lie, right? It has a bit of a difficult history across many fronts, right? But this is a prince who's open for sports, right? And then they say, okay, sports connects people, right? This doesn't have to be a barrier. And I remember very well, the first time he joined the race, he had a big entourage, and
Hmm.
he was not necessarily very accessible, right? Now, we did this team. Fast forward 5 6 years, right? What has happened? Now there's an event in Bahrain. In that event, women and men are participating amongst each other, right? Um, however dressed or clothed, however they want, right? The prince is rubbing shoulders with everybody who is participating. He's also now traveling. He also traveled around the world doing other triathlons, not with a big entourage, right? Rubbing shoulders, knows already a couple of people on the circuit, etc. Then I say, well, we could have done two things, right? When we met him, we could have said, isolate, right? This is not. This is he's done. There's a bit of history here that is not right. Or we can engage with it, and through engagement, I think we've achieved. Of course, it's not a big political thing, but through sport, we've achieved big things, right? And I think like that's the power of sport, if you want. But also, yeah, us being open for an opportunity, connecting, and saying, hey, let's make this happen, and it brings change on so many fronts, right? So yeah,
It's pretty cool, man. Right? Like when you say it out loud, you realize how cool
yeah,
it is what you've done. As you said, it's not this grand, incredible. You're not feeding a million people. Maybe you are actually. I don't know. But at the same time, there is a change happening, and you can see it, and it's going to take some time, right? Everyone always wants something to happen like that. It's like, oh, we partnered with this prince, so why hasn't anything happened? But as you said, over 5 6 7 years, about that amount of time, you have been
yeah,
able to see the incremental changes over time, and then again, as you said, how sports is always here to bring people together, right? I walk into a bar, I see someone with a Mets shirt on. That's the easiest conversation I'm going to have all day because I'm going to talk about something I love and so's the other person, right?
yeah,
So it's that opportunity to bring people together in something that and it's not like we're watching a baseball game. Everybody's running and swimming and they understand the grueling task that goes on their body and the training that went into it. So there's even a further connection,
yeah,
realizing that, hey, we're all people. We're all capable of doing this. It's going to take people different times. But in a sport like triathlon, just the opportunity to do that together is
yeah,
incredible. And I think that is
yeah.
really, really cool, Michael. I think that is really cool.
No, well, yeah, I fully agree, and I'm every day. Look, I think there's the euphoria of doing sports, right, and feeling great after you've done an exercise, right, and ultimately using that as a tool to empower people and bringing people together, and you're setting them up for success once you do that, right? So, I'm very happy. I'm obviously very passionate about it. I'm very happy with it. Yeah,
Keep doing your thing, man. And that has then eventually led to the Super League
yeah,
Triathlon.
yeah.
Um, really, really interesting concept. So I'll let you, right from the horse's mouth, right, explain to me what is the Super League Triathlon? Where did this idea come from? And how have you guys been able to be so successful so quickly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that time, I've had build up mass participation events, right, and we ran a team of professional sports, and I think, okay, where really sits up. If you now look at sports as a business, right, where does the opportunity for triathlon really sits, right? And at that time, well, I mean, I'm talking 5-6 years ago, right? Ultimately, you had Ironman, which has become $1 billion business doing mass participation, right? And consolidate creating, and you are an Ironman, something a lifestyle and a pursuit, right? I mean, it's one of the only brands that people tattoo on themselves, right? So, I mean, the impact of the brand is fantastic, right? And Ironman has, but it's a business that is about mass participation. Although myself in 1996, I started doing triathlon because I was inspired by a personality. Luc van Lierde, first world champion, professional athlete. That's been my inspiration, right? Obviously, but Ironman has grown. It's obviously private equity came in and they said, well, how can we drive up the value quickest? Mass participation, ticketing. That's it, right? Now, but then we take a step back. We look at other sports and where true value sits, long-term true value, right? If you think not as a private equity fund, but as somebody who has a longer horizon, arguably, right? And also to a certain extent do the right thing, right? Do something you love, right? Then it's about creating passion, about creating emotion, right? And we believe that triathlon has a massive opportunity because as a sport it's still relatively young. It's been very fast growing since its inception in the late 80s or early 80s, but it's still very young, and it's been very successful in its mass participation direction. It's also become an Olympic sport, but that's not really taken. There's no real um, private entity that nurtures the professional element of the sport, right? And again, from Belgium being a big cycling fan, I look how cycling has developed and how that stakeholder map is a little bit dislodged, right? With the teams, with like organizations like Tour de France and the broadcasters. So I said, okay, with the proper setup, we can actually control the whole ecosystem. We can engage the athletes. We can organize. We host the events. We have the media rights. It's all in one place, right? Because as a real professional league in triathlon does not exist, and that's it. Then obviously, since it does not exist, we think, okay, we need to engage fans, and obviously, well, how sports was consumed 5, 10 years ago is not the same how they're consumed now, right? Everybody says the attention span is short. People want quick hits, right? They want multiple screens, different interactions. So we went a little bit back to the drawing board of what does that look like and reinvented the format to make it that snappy, unpredictable, ever-changing, and much more action-driven, right? Ironman is 7-8 hours. Super League is 1, right? But it's comparing Kipchoge, a marathon runner, with Usain Bolt, right? We are Usain Bolt, right? This is a 8-9 second race. That's what it is, right? But it's something that you prepare. When a Usain Bolt trained for 20 years, right? Performed for what, 3 minutes in the Olympics over his whole career, right?
If that,
um,
yeah.
yeah, well, indeed. So, I mean, and that's kind of, we said, okay, that's where the unique opportunities sit. If we can own the whole ecosystem, right, and if we can reinvent the sports to be sharp, short, unpredictable, dynamic, right? And then bring in innovation with data and stuff like that, right? Then you got something real cool that speaks to a new audience, right? And to a wider audience also, right? So
Quick,
yeah, so,
sharp
yeah,
shocks. I
yeah,
love it. And I think it's really important, right? Because it's also less intimidating to
yeah,
someone like myself, right?
yeah,
I don't want to run for 7 hours. I will never want to run, bike, and swim for
yeah,
7 hours. Honestly, collectively over the rest of my life, I probably don't want to do that. But in 1 hour, I think I'm capable of figuring that out. And I'm not going to be as fast as those guys and girls that do it, right? But just that also allows for that extra level of like, well, I could probably do that. Like, there's a chance I could do this, and there's a better chance that I'm going to get up off the couch and try and do it rather than see those guys, and you included, and those girls that do the Ironman, which is just an incredible feat.
yeah,
I'm never even going to pretend to care that I want to do that. Like, I won't lie to myself. So I get, like, what, obviously, again, you're a really smart dude. You've like articulated that very well over the first 30 minutes that we've been hanging out together. Why did you think this was the best opportunity for you? because there have been many leagues in other sports that have started up, and the founder and co-founder and CEO, they're super excited. They think it's going to work. Where is the market research? Where is talking to the people? Because again, you're coming from that grassroots opportunity. You owned a team. Why do you believe that this is something that, which has already become relatively successful, will continue to be successful and continue to penetrate in areas that, hey, maybe I'm going to throw it on my second TV, right? There's that opportunity to see
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's a measured approach, right? I mean, indeed, it is a vision that is driven by, let's say, an ideal, arguably, and as I said, it's something that you have to think long term for, right? But then it's also a measured approach. I frankly, I mean, frankly put, it's relatively easy ultimately. Yeah? There's a cost curve and there's a revenue curve, right? And at some point they have to cross, right? And then otherwise, yeah, you invented something to burn money, which it's arguably quite easy, but
Probably fun, but yeah, I get that.
yeah. But yeah, not necessarily very sustainable and not necessarily very satisfying. I think you grow gray hair very quickly. uh, but no, so basically we looked at it and said, well, we want to do all those things, but what do we believe that midterm? I mean, of course, you cannot say in year one, but midterm, 3 to 5 years, what we think is we can generate in revenues from the sport of triathlon. And let's be realistic here, right? We're not soccer, we're not NFL, NBA, etc. What can we generate as the sport that is triathlon, right? And then let's take some benchmarks of within triathlon, successful triathlons, and let's take some benchmarks of other sports, right? Smaller sports that cater for a specific niche or a similar niche, right? And yeah, and we got those numbers together, and we basically said, look, at that price level, we can organize events, and we know that we can generate the revenue. And actually, and in the beginning, we went even a step back, right? Because in the beginning, say again, MVP. What is the MVP? We need to make sure that the athletes are engaged, right? And they think it's cool and they want to participate. And if I say the athletes, I mean the best athletes in the world, right? Um, and then we need to see that we need to check that the audience is engaged, right? That people start following it on Facebook and start talking about it, right? So we did a first event, but we went to a place where the venue had passion and they wanted to co-invest. So we didn't. So I mean, a lot of things had to fall in place,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then when we did that went well. And then again, instead of going just to the next one, we said, okay, let's find another venue, make sure that the venue co-invests, that there's some money there, there's some money from sponsors, and then we do this again, right? And we did that for 2 years and got quite a lot of traction. Got some broadcasters involved. Especially in Europe, short course triathlon and professional short course triathlon is still very much a thing, right? And that kind of got us going. Was a good proof of concept, and was a measured approach, right? And actually kept everybody happy and involved because we were proving points and we were hitting milestones, right? And then in 2019, because it's still an Olympic sports, we kind of aligned ourselves with that and said, well, 2019 is there now. 2020, obviously, the Olympics. So post Olympics, we need to be able to grow, right? And I think we had enough proof of concept to go back to the market to raise a little bit more money and say, because we feel it was a bootstrap
Mm-hmm.
startup, right? Raise a bit more money because now we say we need to be in major metropolitan cities. We need to be where triathletes are to really get bigger traction, right? Broadcasters, they always like home events,
Mm-hmm.
home stars, home crowds, and stuff like that, right? So we said, okay, we need to be in London, we need to be in Munich, and we want to be in LA, right? That's where we need to be. So again, then the thinking process again fairly simple. We have short course triathlon, professional triathlon, Olympics, etc. It gets good traction, and we can do research with broadcasters. It gets good traction in Europe, so yeah, we can build up events from scratch relatively easily because the athletes are there, the fans are there, etc. For US, a little bit more difficult because in US, really the challenge is it's all about Ironman in US, right? So how do you make short course cool again? It used to be cool back in the 80s, right? But now it's not cool anymore. How do you make it cool again, right? and how do you get some attention, especially if your head office is in London, right? And again, it's sport is driven by a community. So we decided, okay, we need to acquire an event. We need to acquire an event that has long history and that has a similar DNA. And so yeah, we came across the Malibu Triathlon. Actually, one of my business partners had raced it many times years and years ago, and he says, "This is a great event, right? It's exactly what we need. It's short course, a short distance, not as short as we do, but it's relatively short distance. It has a big celebrity community going to it year on year, and it has a great cause because it raises, over the last 10 years, it's raised $16 million for Children's Hospital of LA, the biggest
Awesome.
um, fundraising triathlon in the world, actually. I was just say, okay, this is something great, right? So if we want to introduce Super League, we should align with that brand that's been around for 30 plus years and does these great things and has all the celebrity angle also to it. So that's fantastic. So that was the strategy. Obviously, COVID happened and no events happened at all,
I
right?
was
So
gonna say it sounds like a great plan, but then unfortunately you guys got punched in the face, right? So
exactly.
first, I just want to say, everybody out there listening, this is an absolute freaking masterclass. So please keep paying attention. I think this is absolutely incredible, Michael. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. But yeah, so little thing, pandemic happens. We're still kind of in the middle of it, but at least we figured out what we need to do and how to be safe, right? A lot of people are vaccinated, a lot of things. So we're still in it, but we're definitely a little bit more comfortable now than we were, say early 2020, most of 2020. Now, we're almost to 2022 at this point. So then I guess when do you make the executive decision to say, okay, like maybe we can have this race? Okay, maybe, we're still trying to raise money. We're trying to do all these things. How hard are those decisions to make, knowing that you're not a mass event, right? So you're not trying to get thousands and thousands of people. It's a very select crowd. How quickly can you turn something like that around?
No, but there's a more interesting step in between. I tell you, I mean, because okay, pandemic happens. We are in events, right? Outdoor events. So you can't pretty much, and we're not, because okay, here in Europe, then you had Euros soccer league, right?
Mm-hmm.
They somehow found a loophole and 60,000 people were in a stadium, right? But
Huh.
for a triathlon,
Interesting how that happens, right? Weird.
but for a triathlon, you say I bring 6,000 people, right? That's not happening. The impact is too small, right? But so and I was talking to our investors. They said, "Oh, you had great plans, but this is not happening, right? Hibernate, let things go. Use furlough, use definitely hibernate." And I said, no. Innovate is the answer. Let's not hibernate. Let's innovate, because what is also happening? We are still a young brand. There's Ironman out there. There's other big brands out there. I mean, you have the ITU, which is the International Federation. Super League is not necessarily known, right? But if we are the only one doing shit right now, when nobody else is doing it, everybody's looking at us, right? This is an opportunity. So then the question is, what do we do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right. Got to do something. Now we got to figure out what we want to do.
So and then I started. I mean, I'm always doing all sorts of stuff, right? I was doing stuff on Zwift. Zwift, now a
Yes.
billion-dollar company,
Yeah.
right? Indoor cycling. So I said, let's reach out to these Zwift guys, right? And we'll do a triathlon where we swim in a pool and we bike and run on a treadmill and on a stationary bike, and it's a blended event. It's semi-virtual. It's nice and immersive because you can get more data because they're stationary, and by the nature, because they swim in a pool, they're socially distanced. There's lane ropes in the middle. You put treadmills. You put 2 meters apart, and you put a thing, right? So here, that's a great idea. Let's do this, right? Investor says, yeah, you're crazy, but okay, why? I'll go with you, right? I mean, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on this one, and knock on the door of Zwift. Zwift is like, yeah, but we do cycling, and cycling is very, very big. There's millions of people doing cycling. You want to do triathlon? There's massive opportunities on cycling. You want me to do triathlon? Nah, I don't think so. So then found somebody else. But before that concluded, Zwift got wind of it that we were actually still continuing. So they got back in touch and said, "No, let's do this. Let's do this partnership, right?" So and we organized one event, which came across, which was the first triathlon back mid 2020. I'm talking August 2020 now, so mid pandemic still.
Mm-hmm.
Right? great success. Everybody very enthusiastic. We wanted, and also because the athletes were doing nothing, we had all the athletes that we wanted competed in this thing, right? So it was a great success. We went again in the beginning of 2021, right? And this has been extremely successful for us, right? It's we won the Cutting Edge Awards by the Sports Industry Awards, which is basically European Oscars for sport, if you want, right? So massive recognition for it, and now we are in conversations with the governing body of the sport to say, hey, can we collaborate, because this could be the next Olympic sport, right? So yeah, I mean, I think, and again, that's the spirit of entrepreneurship, and that's the spirit of the team we have put together, where we say, we've been requested to hibernate, and we say, no, innovate. This is an opportunity. Let's create something completely new. Think outside of the box. Yeah, go after the biggest ticket with trying to partner with Zwift and do something completely new, right? So yeah, I think that's the spirit and it's been driven. It's obviously driven by passion, but I think there's always something to do. You always think next thing, right?
Yes, if you're standing still, you're moving backwards, right?
Yeah.
Like you always have to be doing something to be trying to
Yeah.
move yourself forwards, and I think that's important. And clearly, Michael, you guys have been able to do that. When were you able to finally start having in-person events again and really start to get the process rolling and say, okay, now this is what kind of we want? Like, it's not perfect yet, right? But this is more towards what we were looking for when we had this vision. Then mid-pandemic, we had a really cool idea, but maybe that's part of the business moving forward, but the core of the business, when were you able to start working on that again?
Well, we always started working, and then we contemplated different ideas, right? Because we have different venues that we have contracts with, some of them in the Middle East, right, which is a bit more difficult. But yeah, some of them on Jersey, an island off the coast of France, right? To say, okay, this is easier. So actually, regarding Jersey, immediately in 2020, we were already kind of, can we do something behind closed doors, etc., etc. Ultimately, yeah. So there was a constant pursuit of making it happen. But yeah, it was really beginning of 2021 that we set ourselves a goal. Okay, in September we want to be there, and having looked at 2020, we kind of see at the back end of the summer, there's typically, I mean, if 2020 were to repeat, at the back end of the summer is relatively good. By October, there's a risk of whatever third, fourth, fifth, whatever wave comes.
Yeah,
right?
Who knows?
But it goes downhill again, right? Because people have been very excited about the summer, and yeah. So I always kind of say, okay, if we want to go for something, let's go for September, and let's just go whoop, 4 events back to back, right? 4 weekends back to back, very interesting. Attention snowballs, right? And let's go to all the venues we want. We do 4 weekends back to back in September. We basically take the athletes, put them on the bus, well, but figuratively.
Yes.
And just put a bunch of cameras there. We get nice, real, interesting content. Content is king, right? Of the athletes going back to back. Also the interpersonal interactions in between, and let's get it done, right? So we started planning that March this year or something, right? And then, but yeah, always still kind of with a lot of uncertainty, right? Because we're talking 4 different locations, and every country has its own regulations, and then they close borders, they open borders again. I mean, like in Europe, it's been like this, right? They open borders, close borders. People go on holiday, boom, border closed. Everybody in panic, can't get home anymore, and nightmare situation,
Yes.
right? And then, yeah, obviously, also we have to create a bubble for the athletes. So how do we do that? So there's and regulations continue to change, right? So it's very challenging, but ultimately, yeah, you set yourself a goal and you go for it, right? And we make this happen. And yeah, sometimes you plan and then you pivot and you reinvent, and then sometimes you think, oh, it's not going to happen, and then 2 days later you think, oh, it's going to be great, and then it's not happening again, right? So it's that journey that we were on for pretty much March till August, right? And then in August, things were still good, so we got relatively confident that all was going to happen, right? And yeah, it was a great season. We had two COVID cases, one in the staff, one of an athlete, but they were athletes that were not on the bus, right? Who kind of went off the bus and tried to come back on the bus. So good scenario. Everything else, everything else was great racing. Some of it in London, it was a great event. People could gather, and we had a couple of thousand of spectators. In Munich, regulation said we had to fence it off, so less than 1,000 spectators because that was regulation. And Malibu and LA, it was the first time in 5 years that the event sold out, right? So it was fantastic. People stepped up. People wanted to come and race, and yeah, it was great. It was great.
And so what's next, right? Like, again, we don't know what the hell is going to happen next year. It's kind of starting to it's Groundhog's Day every year. It looks like it's going to be for a little bit, but what's next? I mean, you guys have figured out that you're capable of running these events. You're capable of bringing people to see these things. As you said, you're starting to speak with broadcasters. I mean, everything's free on YouTube, right? That's always something that I like telling people. Like, you can broadcast anything you ever want. You just put it up on YouTube. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are the next steps that you guys see? As you said, this plan's been pretty laid out. Obviously, some shit's gone on, but you still kind of know where you're trying to go. So what is next year? Are you trying to do 3 straight months and maybe not quite back to back to back? Is it going to be more content, more of that interpersonal content that you said, and maybe that worked really well? Because I'm sure there's a couple different options. What are some of the things that you're looking forward towards next year?
Yeah, I think indeed. I think we stand out within the triathlon world, or even I want to be bullish and say within the world of sports as driving innovation, right? So, and I think what COVID-19 has done, it's actually fast tracked changes that anyway would happen, in my opinion, right? So, for example, I mean, I was Zwift user before, right? But let's be honest, I did Zwift when it rained outside or when it was too cold, right? Now, during COVID, I pretty much Zwifted every day. But the community, and that's now normal to me, right? So now I Zwift more than I ride outside, right? And I have a bunch of friends, and I Zoom call while I'm on Zwift with a mate from China, right? And stuff like that, right? So, and that would have happened anyway, right? It would have probably taken 5 years or longer, but it would have happened anyway, right? So now that has accelerated. So what opportunities has that created, right? And I believe very much in virtual participation, virtual communities now. And then people say, but you're taking away from the physical world. I say, no, I don't believe so. Actually, I think with the virtual participation, you're engaging a whole new audience, right? Because I have 3 young kids. I mean, if I want, and I spend a lot of time working, right? So if I want to go out for a ride, my wife will go, mate, you just worked for 10 hours straight, and now you want to go out and cycle and disappear for 4 hours. That's not happening, right? Baby duty, that's what's happening, right? But what I can do with Zwift at home, right, is I sit here, the baby sits there, plays around a little bit, and I'm doing baby duty, but I'm also doing my Zwifting, right? So I say this opens a whole new opportunity to a whole new group of people that normally would not commit to events or not commit to participation in any shape or form, right? I've spoken to a lot of people who kind of say, going to run, I'm not comfortable wearing like sports clothing. I feel unfit, like I'm a bit body shamed, etc. I don't necessarily want to do it. I prefer to kind of stay home, and I'll lose some weight later, and then maybe I'll come and run with you. Oh, mate, you're never going to lose any weight if you're not starting to run, right? So let's go out and do it. But now they can do it in a virtual world, right? They can do it at home on a stationary bike, Peloton, whatever, right? These communities exist, and they cater perfectly for, again, another group of people who is maybe not necessarily comfortable going outside and take part in a public run, right? But they gain confidence through virtual activity and get good at it, right? And get into it. So I believe that this whole virtual landscape, will just expand participation, mass participation in sports, and I think that's a good opportunity for us.
I completely agree, because there's more people are now, their eyeballs are going to catch it, and those people will work out at home, and as you said, but then those people, there's more chances that they're going to come to some of these events, right?
Yeah,
People are going to make friends and they're going to connect with the community, and then eventually when they feel comfortable, when everyone feels comfortable, they're going to say, you know what, I kind of want to go run one of these events. That would be kind of cool. You do it once a year, big deal, right? Like there's going to be the people that do it 12 times a year, 15 times a year, 20 times a year, no matter what. Those people aren't going anywhere. It's these extra people that now you're starting to catch them in this ecosystem, in this community that you've been talking about. Get them excited about a sport that they don't know too much about, have them learn on their own time, get comfortable with it, and then they're going to come out to some of these events. They're going to come watch, they're going to come participate. So I think it just makes that fishnet significantly wider for a company like you guys, where
yeah.
more people, and now there's an opportunity for them to actually get into the sport that you're very clearly passionate about.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think that is the opportunity is to say, and the real life events will never go away. It's an experience.
Exactly.
It's the cherry on the cake.
Mm-hmm.
You need that, right? People want to be part of that, right? And I think, for me, CrossFit has done had a good job at that, right? They have virtual qualification. They run qualifications virtually. You can do it in your own kitchen if you want, right? And you upload your workouts. You do go to little gyms around. They're everywhere, right? But ultimately, it all ends up in the CrossFit Games, right? And you build a massive pyramid. But because this is virtual, it's massively scalable, and it doesn't cannibalize. I mean, I was in conference and people like, oh yeah, but you're cannibalizing. No, I'm not cannibalizing. I'm tapping into a much wider audience that currently is not even there. You're not even tapping into it with your physical participation, right?
There's
And
so
and
much.
and generally, I just think also that the trends is there, right? COVID has reminded people that health is good, right?
Yeah. Surprise. If you didn't know, it's probably
Yeah,
better to be healthy.
yeah, exactly.
So where can we find more information? Where can we watch? Where can we follow? Give me all that stuff, and I'll put it in the show notes for everybody that's paying attention and wants to click on some stuff. But
Yeah, no,
where can we just find some more information?
yeah, I think it's stuff that we have in the pipeline now. We again, um, yeah, I'm aggressive but also conservative, right? So we've already started experimenting with this virtual participation around the Malibu Tri event, and we had like Bank of America and a couple of other bigger corporates involved in it in a smaller scale, right? And get here, try this virtual participation, try that. Let me know what you think about it, right? It doesn't cost you anything. So I get the experiences in, right? And I think now we have the tech is good, and I think 2022 is for us the point where we roll that out, right? And again, yeah. So follow Super League Triathlon. That's where it will happen, and we will start communicating it on through Facebook, Instagram, on our website. That's the platforms we use to communicate it, right? And obviously we'll continue with the cherry on the cake, the live racing. That's inspiration, aspiration. I mean, yeah, the young kids. That's later I want to be this, right? Um, and yeah, and I pick up sports, and yeah, but offering opportunities for everybody to be healthy, motivated, and fit, right? That's what we stand for.
That's what we're here to do, man. I think this is fantastic. Michael, this absolutely one more time a freaking masterclass in what you're doing and how you're doing it. I hope people are listening and paying attention and understanding that some things really do start like at a very grassroots level. It's talking to people, it's joining a community that you love, not because you want to. It's not you don't start the business because you think it's a great idea. You start it because you think it's a great idea and you freaking love it, right? Like you didn't get into this because you're just like, this is a money making opportunity. No, it's yeah, I can make money doing this, but I can also impact lives, and this is something that I'm extremely passionate about, and that absolutely came across over the last hour that we've been talking. So
No,
I
I think it's
really
important also
appreciate that.
by doing sport, right? I mean, you look at many brands. Brands want to connect to people through their passion. That's a very nice segue to
Yep.
be involved with it, right? So why do all these brands spend money in sports? Because they want to relate to passion, right? So we collect passionate people by doing something passionately, right? It's all about passion, pretty much, right? And I think and we have a very engaged community. We know a lot about them, right? And we are experts in our audiences, right? Because of the depth we have, right? And we have fans, we have participants, and all of that. So and that creates a very interesting commercial opportunities because you're not just advertising. You actually talking directly to the consumer. You know what they want, who they are, and you know what they're passionate about, right? So yeah.
I think it's incredible. Michael, thank you so much. Michael Dhulst, co-founder, CEO of Super League Triathlon. I'll make sure everything is in the show notes for anyone if they want to check it out. Michael, sincerely appreciate your time today, man.
Cheers. It was great talking to you.
Appreciate it.